Hello, listeners, and welcome to a Geek Tragedy Genius version, where your tragedists throw out additional thoughts and materials throughout the show. I'm Stephen, known online as Plague Mantle, and for various reasons across the world and off into space, where I'm known... No, I'll stop. I won't go about the Mekon. He's not real. I'd like to welcome to the pod the most erudite human. You know who the Mekon is, Holly?
No, I've got no idea.
Holly properly. It's
Big
from down
head,
there.
big head, big head.
That's not very nice, Mark.
From Dan Dare, part of the future. Anyway, yes, hello Holly, how are you?
I am knackered, but otherwise all right. Thank you very much.
Are you very properly, as you should be?
I am very proper, yes, in many
Excellent.
properly types of way.
Excellent.
Mostly in a tired one.
And of course, our very own salvaged man, crafter par excellence, and Dan Dare rememberer, Mark Caudry. Hello Mark, how are you?
Hello, Stephen. I'm very well, thank you very much. And I am this evening sipping on some rather fine chilly mead that I purchased from our local castle. All those things are true. I love having a local castle that you can pop in and buy some mead from.
So if you're trying to work out where Mark lives, you can narrow it down to he's near a castle. Somewhere in Cornwall where they do a lot of festivals.
Yeah, we have some captive Benedictine monks that they keep in the catacombs. But they can get out because there's a secret tunnel which runs underneath the co-op, apparently.
What are you trying to squeeze out there, Holly?
It doesn't. It's completely irrelevant now.
No, that's fine. We live on irrelevant. Do it.
It was funny. It was funny at the time. It's not going to be funny now.
It could still be funny now.
It's definitely not funny, but largely it was because you were sort of leaning back with like with the sort of the glass of mead and all of that. I'm sipping on a glass of mead. It just felt very Geek Tragedy After Dark. You know.
Well, this is this is it, really, isn't it?
It's just
for the special patrons, paid content, and all of that.
So this is what you get. You also get behind the scenes our producer and long-suffering Kit, who should be named from their time during Star Wars, Kit.
And also their time as a professional cricket player.
Just racking my brains, can't think of any more kits off the top of my head. So I'm going to ask, Plagway Mantel, how are you?
As I'm known on Mars, Plague Mantle or Plage Mantel. That's the Martian way of saying
That's not how the GUE
established.
sound works.
It's Martian. It's Martian.
It doesn't make a difference. I don't care.
When little lightning bolts come out of my head.
I don't care. That is not how a GUE sound works.
I'm all right. It's been a weird day, but I'm all right. Got a new board game called Chance for the Old Ones, in which you play, which I kickstarted and it turned up. It's beautiful. I should show the art book at some point, Mark. It's really nice.
Yeah, you got it, Mike.
In which you play the cultists, and you have to kind of like take over the world. And my favourite bit is that you build a cult, and you have to stop investigators joining your cult because they try and sneak in, and you don't know who they are, and you have to use subterfuge to stop them.
Is that a bit like playing the virus in Pandemic?
I guess it is.
Yeah.
I guess it is.
Yeah.
I do have a game called Cthulhu Wars, in which it's a bit like Risk, in that you've got a big map of the world, and you've got like your old ones try and like influence taking over the world, and you've got giant miniatures. They're huge for like Cthulhu and stuff. They're really big, except for is it Hasta, isn't it?
It's Hasta. Hasta's just regular human-sized, and like all of the rest are like giant. But so what they've done is they've made tiny human-sized Hasta, but they've put him on a giant throne just to give him some form of gravitas.
Just for his fragile ego.
Yeah, his little tiny human ego.
Oh.
It's not about the size.
It's not about the size of your throne. Anyway, so we're off on our first foray. I don't know what this is. Into the world of first foray.
Apparently so.
Everyone's doing it.
I bet you're glad you paid for this.
So we're off into a world of our first foray. It's the world of bonus material. and inner delvings of your hosts as you, our loving audience, grows.
I'm not miming delving. That's
We
just
are.
not happening. God.
Mine was much ruder. So we started to get more comments and questions about what we're doing, mostly delving. So we're starting to expand our horizons and looking to the future, like Dan Dare, pilot of. So bonus material like this will start to fill up the internet with the nonsense that we just went through for the last 5 minutes, and we'll be opening up the Discord to Q&As, special requests, general discussion. Our bags of creativity are full of fuel for the fires of storytelling and the steam train of silliness that we have embarked on.
And pumpkins.
And pumpkins and greased leopards and various other things. But we spent a lot of time recently talking to you about the endeavours of our misspent youths and what brought us together. And one of the subjects that we wanted to talk about was toys and gamers. What we played when we was kids, innit? Things that we treasured and all the special places that we found to play when we were little kids back in the day. But we ran out of time because it's Halloween, and at the moment, if you're listening to this later, it's not Halloween anymore, but it was Gothmas. Or what do we really call Halloween?
Spooptober. I'm not calling it Margaret. I'm not doing it.
Start a trend. It's Margaret.
Not going to make Margaret happen.
Margaret got in the way, and we had to kind of get back to the mainstream pod. But we wanted to sort of slot this in as bonus material. So we're going to talk about stuff what we played with when we was small. Well, you know, just to emulate his youth. Mark drinks chili mead as he did when he was a wee 6-year-old Ben.
from a different, but from a different local castle.
Actually, I just mostly drank Benlin when I was 6.
Oh,
I was
best,
a
though, isn't it?
sickly child, and my mother used to pile it down my throat.
Calpol for me. Benylin is gross. Like I still have Benylin when I have like coughs and stuff. Calpol, on the other hand,
it does nothing for you.
Calpol,
at least you can get high off that.
I really do enjoy Calpol.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was
The
very ill with
strawberry
mumps
one, not
and
the
measles,
orange.
mumps and measles at the same time, laid up on my sofa, unable to move, terribly ill. My nan would be left to look after me. My nan was a very traditional lady. She would boil me some water and then make me drink it and tell me that it would make me better. And then she would force me to try and get up and do shit. It was grand. We didn't have medicine in my house, really.
Is this the same nan that cheated at cards for years?
So my favourite story about my nan is that we couldn't really afford to go on holidays. So my nan, who could afford to go on holiday, would pay for the holidays. And then my parents would take us to places like Cumbria and shit. But we'd have my nan with us. And she would do stuff like be sat in the back of the car. Like when we were all out having like on a picnic benches eating lunch, she'd be in the car having a lunch, like, meh. And then, and obviously I have to describe this if you're not watching, but she would then bang on the window until she got my attention and give me the double fingers like this. And then I'd give them back to her. And then she'd be like, oi, look at him, look what he's doing. And my parents would like crucify me at this point. And she'd be like, that was my nan. She was a glorious lady. But yeah, anyway. So that Christmas. No, yes, maybe. Toys. That happens at Christmas. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about Christmas. I came into existence at the age of 14, so I didn't have any youth stuff. That's a lie, but we'll worry about that later. But yeah, so questions. What were the first toys, Holly, that you played with that made a big impression? You knew you were going to stick with them. Quick answer. What was your first toys that you remember? First things in your phone, you're like little, and you're going, oh, I played with this, and you're going to stick with this forever. Quick answer.
Barbies and Kinects.
Kinects.
Yeah. It was called Kinects at the time. It's like Meccano, but it's plastic and it's all like...
Oh, is it the long thing with the little bubbles on the end?
Yeah,
Williams does some of that I get to tread in every so often.
I love it. I used to build it. I had a kit to build a helicopter.
And
marbles, and I had marble run, and like I used to build like giant, great big marble runs, and then put all of my marbles down and have races and build league tables to see which marble was the quickest. And I've still got all my marbles from when I was a kid. Literally speaking, potentially not figuratively.
Oh, there you go. First question answered. The foundation of our evening begins. Mark, first things in your head. First things you play with.
First things I kind of remember having a few of those little plastic knights in armour. You can
On the
still
little
get them. Yeah.
Metal-based ones.
No. They're all plastic. Little knights in armor. Some of them on horseback. Some of them not. Also dinosaurs, little toy dinosaurs. Love those. Yeah, love little toy dinosaurs.
Holly, you've
And
given your answer, Holly. You've got to stick with it now.
No,
I
there's
guess
one more thing.
go on.
But after Mark.
Okay,
We'll
fine.
circle back to me.
An Action Man. I just loved my Action Men. They were great. Sadly, a lot of them died in combat when I grew up because I ended up getting hold of an air pistol. My dad bought me an air pistol for a.
Well, at least that came later. At least that came later. I like the fact that we've now replaced this with After Dark to After Mark, which is grand. What did you get up to after Mark, Beans?
No, so because I grew up primarily just outside of Winchester, and there's a little independent toy shop in Winchester called the Toy Cupboard, and it's one of the most, like, when you're a kid, it's fascinating because it's this old, like, terraced, like, really old building, and it goes up like 4 stories, and each of the stories has like different nooks and crannies, and it's got all of this different stuff in it. And I used to go there. I used to be allowed to go there with my mum whenever we went into town to go shopping, which wasn't very often. I could get, they had like teeny tiny, like they were like the sort of the plastic, like very, very, very heavy, like not hollow, solid plastic farm animals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then like their fences, and then there were styles, and then you could build like a whole farm, and then you had to get all of your fencing right, and then you could put the cows in. And I basically have just realized now that what I sort of thought of as playing was setting everything up as a tableau, looking at it and putting it all away again. That was kind of where that ended. And also Sylvanian families.
Okay, enough.
Sorry.
Enough. Calm passions. I'm just going to say that I remember, and I don't know if these words mean anything to you, when I was small, I got my cousin's hand-me-down stickle bricks.
I love stickle bricks.
There you go. So when we moved to Christmas, right, do you have a memorable Christmas list of one toy that you really wanted to get at any point in your youth that you really kind of you were like, I must have this?
Yeah.
I must have this. Well, Holly's already had Holly's already had a second go. So Mark, what was your must-have?
I have a very specific memory of being at my grandmother's down in Christchurch, and for one Christmas, I said I'd like Action Men, and I actually have it here. I was thrilled to get the Action Man spaceman suit. Unfortunately, he's lost a glove, so he's not ready for the vacuum of space anymore. But I have a photograph of me as a very, very happy young lad with my 2 cousins who were much younger than me, and me holding this Action Man going with a really big smile on my face. So, and I still have him. Here he is. Spaceman Action Man.
For those of you who are listening at home, Mark is holding up a man that he's found on the street, has bound him and placed him inside a space costume.
Don't do that.
For our American listeners, Action Man is basically
G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe. Yeah, but it was a British version of G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
There you go. I did also have Action Men, but again, like if this was my stories, it's all going to be hand-me-down stuff. But my cousin's Action Men had no hair; they've mostly been rubbed bald, and were always missing at least one limb. So they were very Toy Story, from my my kind of version of things.
They were war wounded.
Yeah, absolutely. I did have a couple, and they were brave souls that had made their way to my house, where they were treated for their injuries and then left under a bed in a box. Holly, what was your Christmas list thing that you got? What was exciting? What was amazing?
It was the mermaid jewel hair Barbie. There were 3 different kinds. There was one with a gold tail, which was like traditional blonde Barbie, and then one with a blue tail and one with a pink tail. And I was desperate desperate for the one with the gold tail. Absolutely desperate. And it got to every day. I don't know how people didn't realize that I was autistic quicker. Every day in the car on the way home from primary school, I would wish that that doll would be somewhere in my house. And the first thing that I did when I got to my house was check every single room in the house in case the Barbie was there. The Barbie was never there. The Barbie was never going to be there because I hadn't actually told anybody I wanted it yet. And
Not even Santa.
not even Santa. And it was at the top of my Christmas list for that year after months and months of me running around the house every time I got home, even like going up the ladder into like the little attic kind of clubhouse thing that I had. It was never there. It was never there. But I got it that year. And I remember taking it to school and being so super, super proud of this doll.
Where is it now?
Literally not a clue.
It's not in your attic clubhouse, because I'm quite interested in your
Not in
attic
my attic clubhouse. I say it was an attic clubhouse. So my house when I was a kid was an Elizabethan. It used to be 3 one up, one downs.
Okay.
That had all then been made into one bigger house.
So 3 up, 3 down.
So it was a 3 up, 3 down, but you couldn't get to the room above what was in the modern era the kitchen was only accessible by a ladder from the kitchen. You couldn't get to it via any of the other rooms in the house. So I had to go up a ladder. You had to go up a ladder to get there, and it had like loads of storage stuff in it. And the ladder was always down. Because it just was just next to the fridge. It was just next to the fridge was the ladder up into like this little kind of cozy attic space. And I took the cushions that from my bed and a couple from like a chair and just put them up there. And I used to go and sit up there sometimes and read and play and things. I was always one of those kids that desperately wanted like a den, desperately wanted like a clubhouse. And I had that one, and then inside a yew tree in my landlady's garden, you could kind of just like crawl inside and it all opened up, and I had a little den in there as well. Because I was much more kind of sort of that I kind of had that sort of focus over just wanting like all of the toys and stuff that all of my peers had. I was much happier just kind of roaming around the countryside, picking up bugs.
I don't have a Christmas story like that.
I kind of rambled a bit. I'm terribly sorry. I get very nostalgic about these kinds of things. And
my best Christmas was when I got Hercules, the side-scrolling game.
Really, in 1997?
Yeah, that was my 1997. I got that for Christmas. I unwrapped it and it just ran off around the house. But Hercules, sideways scrolling, just went.
Have you ever completed it?
No, I lost it. It went. It's gone.
Oh, okay.
Into the world, out into the void. That was it. So, yeah, there we go. That's already taken up almost half the pod.
I'm so sorry. So sorry, everybody.
Never a bad thing. It's never a bad thing. I'm just remarking it. It's already taken up half the pod. It's impressive. We have many tales about stories about toys. Is where I was going to go with that. It's throwing me off now. So, I was going to talk a bit about toy adverts, but let's just go straight into like kind of, because you kind of walked into the big path of Barbies and Action Men. But Mark, earlier when we were prepping up for the pod, you had some really fascinating toys. I had no idea what the fuck they were. And you said they were Muton and Cyborg. What is that?
It was a range from Dennis Fisher, toy
Was he
maker.
the Prime Minister or something?
No, toy maker. So it's this little man in the shop, and he made all of these toys. No, it was a range of small action figures, probably 8-inch action figures, and they all had interchangeable limbs and interchangeable costumes.
Like Betty
And-
Spaghetti.
And as it happens, I also have kept my cyborg and muton toys.
That looks nothing
because
like
I loved,
Betty Spaghetti.
because I loved them, and I've got all the interchangeable. Here we go. I've got all the interchangeable limbs and stuff.
Those who can't see, Mark is holding up like a see-through mannequin person with inside components.
Disposable action figure.
With a, well, I mean, I can't describe the head really.
It looks like a light bulb.
Yeah.
Well, it's the only rubbery part of him, and sadly over the years it has yellowed. But it used to be clear, and you can vaguely make out he's got sort of like a mechanical brain thing.
Was he?
But he's got exactly the same. I think it was a Japanese toy range, which
I was going to say the whole concept of the changing limbs and stuff. That was a very Japanese toy.
Yeah, very much. And then the Muton character had 3 different costumes. This was like a skeleton costume that he had.
No, that is very Japanese. Isn't it?
My favourite, which is like a fish creature. So, and then they brought along Android to join the crew a year later. And I kept all of these toys because I loved them. They were just, I had so many little adventures in my head with them when I was a kid. And I kept them all in tins, and now they are still in virtually pristine condition.
Haven't they? They've got the whole mobility on all their joints by the looks of it.
They've got exactly the same articulation as original Action Men. So yeah, they're fully posable. And you could take them apart and replace limbs or replace heads and just interchange them. They were great.
That's super cool.
Yeah. So sci-fi toys for me were like the thing which I loved a lot of. And another range, there were in fact 3 ranges of toys. Another range was Major Matt Mason, which was arranged by Mattel. And Major Matt Mason was an astronaut, and I don't know how, 6-inch tall, maybe 6-inch figure, maybe slightly taller.
How do you know Major Matt Mason, Holly? Oh, come on.
Come on, how do you know?
Who played with Major Matt Mason dolls?
Jack O'Neill.
Close.
Richard Dean Anderson.
No, you're going the wrong way now. you had the characters. The character was the right bit.
Jack O'Neill.
No, but then you went into the actor rather than a different character.
Oh, Jack O'Neill. Amanda Tapping.
Well, yes, but her character.
Sam Carter.
God. There you go.
Yay!
Did her character play with Major Matt Mason? I mean, they go for a lot of money now, but they were rubberized figures with wire frames inside them. So they're just wired rubberized figures, and inevitably the wire would snap after it was flexed a lot. So I still, unfortunately, I didn't keep any of my actual Major Matt Mason figures, and inevitably they probably would have snapped. But I do have one character from the Major Matt Mason range here, which is Scorpio. Again, he is all wired, but as a very good child, I hardly ever bent his limbs, so all of his wires are still fully intact. And inside, he has a light bulb in his head and a battery pack in the back, and his eyes light up. He's like a sort of pink and purple ant type character for those people just listening and not seeing.
He's like standing like a normal human being. He's got like an ant head and long, weird fingers.
He's an anthropomorphic. He kind of looks a little bit like a Rhodian, but just with like a much more Spartan jaw.
Yeah, he's great though. He was one of my favourite toys, and again, I kept him in a tin, very pristine. Never bent him because I realised, probably 70s. I realised that if I flexed him a lot, he would break, and that would be sad. So I never flexed him. Who knows, if I had Major Matt Mason still, maybe I might have one of those intact. And I wish I wish I could get hold of them again. They go for quite a lot of money on eBay. Major Matt Mason.
So this is why Mark needs Patreons.
Yeah, so he can
If
cash
anybody
in on
out
his
there
Major Matt Mason
has a
addiction.
Major Matt Mason that they don't want, I have a
They don't get much
Scorpio
money on
here.
eBay, so don't sell them.
Yeah, no, they're worth nothing. Don't even bother to look on eBay.
Just send them
Send them straight to me. It'll be fine. I'll look up them.
send them straight to Mark via his local castle.
Yeah. Send them. Get the parade to take it to the castle. Get Mark and pick it up.
I had toys that were really similar to the Major Matt Mason ones. They were called Betty Spaghettis, and it was basically like the same thing. They had interchangeable, like, bendy limbs, and like she had like kind of spaghetti sort of like plastic hair, and I can still genuinely remember the smell of that plastic, like when you kind of like take everything out of the box, like the smell of like Barbie plastic and like doll plastic is like that's
I was going to say, that's probably one of the biggest things in the olfactory sensation of new toys in the 80s and 90s. They were really quite pungent.
They were
I remember.
so
God, yeah, all those organic compounds that were being exuded from them.
I had a.
But they were flexible. Were they bendy, or did they have like articulated limbs?
They were bendy. Like, look, they were like I can.
Because what you're looking up, because I found it quite, because like when I was a kid in the early 80s, I all the toys that people had at school were like the Star Wars toys or He-Man toys. There was no articulation. They were just kind of straight limb things. I mean, like Kenner knocked them up. I know that Kenner knocked out the Star Wars toys really quickly. Did this deal with Star Wars and got them out really, and everything looked very similar. But
this is why I never collected Star Wars figures, because they just look shit. They really were.
It was what always really annoyed me about Barbies against like Action Man or like anything like that. The only time that you got a Barbie that was fully articulated in its joints, like in its elbows and its knees, was when it was like a sporting Barbie. So like all of your Barbies that like were just like your like regular like fashion Barbies, their knees weren't like fully articulated. You could bend them and they would sort of stay there, but they weren't like they were built for sort of for the aesthetic of like the smooth leg rather than the leg that had an obvious joint in it. So like you couldn't ever, if they were sat down, you couldn't ever sit them down and put their feet on the floor. They would just kind of like have their legs sort of like slightly
in high heels,
stuck out, and they were constantly in high heels, unless again they were a sporting Barbie, in which case they had really weird flat feet. Like it was just yeah.
No, I mean, considering how many I've mutilated over the years for my creepy dolls, yeah, I mean, Barbies have got very little articulation. It's a great shame.
Yeah.
But it was weird that the early 80s had a lot of that going on. But I will say, in defense of the Star Wars line, that sure, the figures weren't that great. The only exciting thing about the figures was you had a lightsaber wielding one, and you could push it out there. They had a big hole in their hands, and the lightsaber was up their sleeve, and you could push it up.
That's so cool.
The vehicles were awesome. I mean, like the Millennium Falcon was the holy grail of all toys of all time, in my opinion. I mean, I never had one, but the fact that it was like it looked beautiful, right? I mean, I didn't have one until I was older, not when I was a kid. I kind of like picked one up when I was like 10, which is a bit later than you'd want one, but it had articulation, like the legs came down and stuff. You could take the back off. The interior was there. You put batteries in it, and it made the sound of the Millennium Falcon flying, and then the back lit up, and it was gorgeous. The Attack Walker was amazing. Everything, all the Star Wars toys that were vehicles, were top notch.
That is how I felt about Thunderbird 2. I never had one, but my friend Sammy had one. He had a big Thunderbird 2, and like I just thought that was I thought it was the shit.
I got one second hand, and it was blue.
What?
Yeah, there was some really weird stuff. I had a Space 1999 Eagle Transporter, which was metallic green.
Yeah, I had that. All this stuff came from my cousin, right? So like where you had those little spongy legs that it landed on, two of them were missing. So if it ever wanted to take off, I had to drag it up, whatever. It was done in, and the same with the Buck Rogers Starfighter. That was, I had one of those, but it had no boost on the back because my cousin had eaten. He was terrible. He would just, unless it was a football, he would eat the toy, and that was how that went down. And then he would give it to me. He wouldn't just go like, "I don't want this," and give it to me. He would eat bits of it first and then hand it over. The bastard. Anyway, but yeah, all they were really weird colours, or there was the wrong person in them. If they had a pilot, it would be like James Bond, and you'd be like, that's not Buck Rogers.
No, that's so
Virtually
weird.
all of the Jerry Anderson Thunderbirds toys and Captain Scarlet, they were all the wrong colour. They just loved metallic green and metallic blue for some reason.
Yeah, it's very odd.
That's really bizarre. That's really bizarre.
Yep.
Yeah.
Huh.
Which is why I ended up repainting a lot of my toys. I still have an Eagle Transporter, which I painted white, but then I tried to use it in a little Super 8 film and make the engines go. So I can't remember what I put in the little thrusters. So they're partly melted because I set light to something and just put it in there. So it was on wires.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, one of my outstanding memories of the Thunderbird 2 model was that it had a little compartment that dropped down that would thing. But what was in my one when I got it was a US cavalryman's torso and leg, who had been forcibly interjected inside the
That's
capsule.
Thunderbird 7.
Well, it was just another bit of toy that my cousin stuffed inside Thunderbird 2's travelling compartment.
So weird.
It's a classic Thunderbird 7.
I could never get him out.
Headless torso of a
Oh,
cowboy.
I am one of my abiding memories of being a kid was because I mean we didn't it was just me and my mum for a lot of when I was growing up, and we didn't have a lot of money, and and I was perfectly content largely to just read books. That was all I really wanted to do.
Yep. Library and TV.
Library, TV, and I was the only kid in my whole village, so I could just roam and everyone looked out for me. And one of the places that I used to go really regularly was our next door neighbour who lived, she was like our next door neighbour, but she also lived like 100 metres away. There was a lot of big garden between us and her. And all of her 3 children had grown up and moved away and gotten jobs in London, or and they very rarely came home. And she was a lovely lady. She was called Sally, and she was American, and she introduced me to Lady Grey tea. She had a well in her kitchen, which I thought was just the coolest thing ever. And she and she had she had all of the toys that her kids had when they were growing up, and she was she was like getting on a bit, she was like past middle age, and she was just her by herself in her house, and she was lonely, and I would just kind of go around and sit and have tea with her, my like 7-8-year-old self. And then I'd go up the stairs. The stairs were really creepy because she had pictures of her kids, like portrait drawings of her kids on the walls, and their eyes would follow you wherever you went. But
that's quite creepy if that's actually what happened.
On the landing was this big old doll's house, and it was full of original kind of the original porcelain dolls and really finely crafted furniture, and just 70s tat, all of the new plastic stuff, and other just things that had just kind of made their way into this doll's house over the years. There was a giant anthropomorphic rat who I think was supposed to be the dad or the granddad in the house, and I wanted a doll's house from that point on so badly, because I would just sit and play with this for hours and just set it all up and make it look really pretty, and it was wonderful. And then eventually, when I was about 13 or 14, I think, I persuaded my mum, my stepdad, to get me a doll's house, and my granddad wallpapered the whole thing and put carpet in it, and he was going to do proper electrics and wire the whole thing, but we didn't get time. And now I'm thinking about that. Now I really want one again.
Oh.
I really want a doll's house. I'm going to buy myself a doll's house. I'm going to do that.
I never had a doll's
the
house.
Ibsen play.
I never had a doll's house, but my dad, I remember one year, made me, as a Christmas present, a fort. Well, he described it, and it kind of was from memory, a mixture of a fort, like cowboys and Indians fort, and a petrol station, a garage. And I don't quite know how he achieved it. Maybe it was a transitional thing that he started off making one thing and ended up making another, and had a bit of both. But yeah, because my dad he was very good with his hands and would make stuff. So sometimes I would get Christmas presents that he had made, and I remember one year he had made me this a box that you opened up, and it had all felts and glues and plastics and stuff to make things out of. So it was just basically a big box full of making materials, which was wonderful.
It's very
And
cool.
that was one of
That's
my Christmas
awesome.
presents.
Well, I was going to ask as a next and probably like kind of leading into the last bits of the pod was going to be like, what were your? But you may have already touched on this because I was going to say like, what were going to be your, your most important inspirational gifts that you were given over the years? The ones that really kind of like, if you could have them back right now, if you didn't have them, at your fingertips, whatever you'd want back, or at least have made the biggest impact on your life. Do you think?
I think it would be, for me, I think it would probably be model kits that I
The Aurora ones, yeah?
Yeah, the Aurora model kits. And for those who haven't listened to previous episodes, hearing me go on about them, Aurora was a model company. I think they still exist.
I found it.
And they produced a range of glow in the dark universal horror monster kits: Frankenstein, Dracula, Creature from Black Lagoon, King Kong, and Godzilla were in there as well. The Forgotten Prisoner, The Witch, Phantom of the Opera.
How many did you have?
I had the entire range eventually.
Wow.
I had a shelf in my bedroom, and I'd like maybe I'd get one for my birthday, and maybe I'd get one for Christmas or something, or maybe I'll just save up for one. But I had what I believe is the entire range, and I don't have a single one of them left. It's such a shame.
Man.
I know,
That is
a real shame.
Would you? That's what you'd want back to look at. And
I would love to see some of them. Yeah, I'd love to see some of them again.
Did you have to paint them all yourself and stuff?
Yeah, and that's why I think they were inspirational for me, because it was I learned a lot of skills there. I learned neatly gluing things together and trimming and cleaning off seam lines, and I learned the painting and paint finishes and all of that. So yeah, it was that process of creating. And the same thing I got from Lego. Not so much Meccano. I didn't really have any Meccano, but I did have Lego. And that was back at the time when it was literally just bricks and bits of roof and occasionally a door and a window. We didn't have any of this fancy.
And a flag.
Yeah, I might have had a flag. Who knows? I might have had a flag.
Flags for your castle.
But it was Lego was very, very basic back when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's definitely doing stuff with William now. It's incredible.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was seeing the stuff. It's like that's not Lego. Is that Lego?
Yeah, it's very cool. Well, you, Holly, what would be yours answer to the same question? Don't try and dodge it now.
I'm not trying to dodge it.
Is it your bear?
Well, I do love my bear. My bear was given to me by my cousin on the day that I was born. So this bear,
Loving a bear is always good.
This bear is 34 years old, and I think he looks pretty good for 34.
Yeah, it's
to be honest,
top bear.
Like,
don't ever give them to me.
I'm never.
My
bear
is very threadbare.
Your bear is a very threadbare bear. The bear, but to be honest, like maybe my doll's house, because there was a lot of kind of artistry, like gentle artistry and gentle imagination that kind of went into putting all of that together and building like an existing kind of soap opera narrative for all of the people that lived in it, and introducing new things. You had to make sure that they fit, and I think it built a lot of kind of the principles of design in my head, and the principles of like aesthetics and how things fit together, and how to in sort of both a physical way and in a narrative way as well, like how things just sort of slot into place and how you make introductions of like one thing into another. So that probably, but otherwise everything that ever made a really big impression on me when I was a kid, I've still got, because I never throw books away.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just books. It's always just
That's
books.
good. It's a good answer. I mean, like if I gave mine, which I will, because I should probably have some impact at the end of the show. But it's been great hearing your stories, though. By the way, just it's been. I love it. I love. One of the things I love about this pod is the days that I do just sit here and ask you guys questions, because I just love listening to it. It's great. It's nice. Anyway, when I was small, obviously I told you before about like the video player that was obviously a big part of my life back then, that my dad won, and we got to watch things like Backstreet Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. Yeah, so lots of inspiration on that front going on. And then when I went to school, I had my best friend had 2 older brothers. I can't remember if I ever said this before, but they were 8 years older than us, and they were already on the Games Workshop route, And he would occasionally bring into school like orcs and goblins from Warhammer, which I'd be like, what are these? These look suspiciously like things from Lord of the Rings that I'm familiar with. And via this medium of my best friend or brothers, I kind of got to look at stuff like D&D and things, but I didn't understand it because it was those old D&D books, like first edition stuff, were very confusing for us.
They were.
Like for me now, like let alone when I was like 6 or 7 years old. And at some point, on one of these holidays, I went into a shop which was full of this stuff. I don't know. I honestly don't know where I was anymore. It was on some kind of holiday with my nan, and I wanted something. I never ever really asked for stuff because we didn't. I understood that we didn't have a lot, and it wasn't a terrible childhood, by the way. I wasn't like oh my god, we've got nothing. It was all lots of playing piano around with lots of family and singing songs. It was a proper Cockney childhood. Yeah. You're not a real Cockney.
I am a real Cockney, thank you very much. I was born in London and sound of both bells.
I got bought.
Blimey, Levedack, me Ollie properly, and no mistake.
And because I asked, I got bought the Red Box D&D starting set, which was basically a dumbed-down version of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And I read it, and it started with the words "start here," and just then like kind of explained. It just took me straight into a dungeon, and it was like one of the old fighting fantasy books. It just kind of taught you how, by going through it taught you how to roll dice and how to like do your first fight. And you're attacked by a rust monster that's attacking your weapons, the carrion crawl that paralyzed you. And I was like, oh my god, this is incredible. And I've still got it. It's over there somewhere. I won't go and get it, but it's just sat over there. It's one of the few things that I own from that age. And yeah, that absolutely took me on my very first proper adventure into Dungeons and Dragons. With these dice, and I remember being in the back of the car driving back with my nan next to me, cursing the fact that she bought me this thing, no doubt, and trying to roll dice on
flipping the V's at you.
Yeah, absolutely, probably, or calling me a little bastard. Seriously, and I try and roll the dice on the what's it called on the back when you lift the boot up and the thing goes.
The ashtray.
Not the ashtray.
The parcel shelf.
That's it, the parcel shelf. Thank you, Holly. Trying to roll dice on this tiny parcel shelf in the back of a Mini. It's very exciting. But yeah, that was my first. That's my first most treasured object.
Yeah, I've still got my blue book.
Amazing.
From my first D&D blue book, plus loads of books which I should have been doing homework in, filled with my first ever written dungeons.
Exercise books were the way forward. Steal them from school, fill them full of adventures. My mum would come downstairs and be going, "Oh, you're doing geography homework?" Yes, I wasn't. I was making maps.
Yes,
drawing out islands, mapping islands and stuff. It was glorious. But yeah, so this is our first Patreon pods. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Did you guys enjoy it? Did you enjoy talking on Patreon pod about it?
Yeah.
It's a bit of nostalgia and to have an excuse to get my favourite toys out again.
A little bit more of an insight into our lives when we were small and why we got together. Because if you've noticed, when we talk about stuff, we just seem to like kind of trigger each other into conversations about other things, which is grand. It's a good geek trigger. It's fantastic to do. It's great. I love it. So yes, I hope you've enjoyed it, everyone, for your first Patreon Genius Geek style tragedist pod. We'll be back somewhere on here doing something, talking about other aspects of our life that we love. Probably when we run out of pod, we'll do like a month of podding about, as we're doing at the moment, Halloween, or like role-playing games, or making tea, or whatever it is that we fancy. And we generally kind of at the end go, we've got loads more to say, and we say we're going to revisit it, but instead we're going to start like shoving it in here, shoveling it into this room. And as we said, Mark will show us how to make something, or just film himself making something, and we might discover that all Mark does in his room is sleep, and little elves come out of the corner and make all his stuff with little tools. And he
Yeah,
wakes up in the
but
morning.
I made the elves.
Love it.
Mark Corduroy, reanimator.
Well, they were dead elves.
Oh,
Yeah, anyway, that kind of stuff. Holly will talk about books. We form a little book club. Holly really wants to form a book club. We've probably done a book club, and I will undoubtedly work on about games as I've just done, and tell you what I think is good and what is bad, and why I think it's good and bad. But until then, gentle listeners, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
Harold Price, goodbye. We love you very much. Take care of each other. You have been listening to A Geek Tragedy with me, Plague Mantle, and my best friend, the excellent Holly Properly, and our actually famous guy, Mark Cordery. If you like this, there is plenty more at patreon.com/A Geek Tragedy. Production is by Kit Britnell. Our logo and artwork is by markcordery.com. Music is by Borislaw Kozielski. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Geek Tragedy. Email us at ageektragedypodcast@gmail.com. Subscribe, leave us a rating and a review. And don't forget to tell all your geeky friends. Also, a big shout out to all of our genius geeks. We adore each and every one of you. And of course, much love. Take care of each other.